Most websites have their own domain name. It's possible to get a website on the internet on somebody else's domain name, either through a subdomain or a subdirectory, but this doesn't look as professional. If you already have a domain, then you can go watch this video and figure out how to set up the name servers correctly so that we can move forward on the course. But this video is to give you a little bit of insight into how to choose a domain name and then some tips on actually purchasing your domain name. So when you're looking to pick a domain name, you want to keep a couple of things in the balance. You have ease of typing, ease of communicating the name of your domain, and ease of remembering the domain. And then lastly, you've got the uniqueness and the descriptiveness of your domain. And you want to find a balance between all these different factors. So for example, ease of typing. Say you have the domain name AZ4GF. This is easy to type because it's shorter. A longer domain is harder to type. A shorter domain is easier to type. So az4gf.com. But the problem is it's actually not easier to type than something like banana bakery box. That's longer, so you'd think it'd be harder to type. To somebody who can't touch type, it would be. But since we can touch type, it's actually quicker to type that in than to have to stop, look at your keyboard, find the characters we don't use as often, Z and 4. So you want to keep this in the balance. So try and find a domain that doesn't have weird characters in it, doesn't have dashes or things like that. In terms of communicating, you also want a domain that's easy to verbally communicate what the domain is. So something like az4gw.com, maybe over the phone would be kind of hard to communicate. You'd be like A as in apple, Z as in zebra, 4 as in the number 4. What? But if you say banana bakery box, that's going to make it right across easily. We're very good at hearing words, so that's a lot easier to communicate. And in terms of memory, the third thing, it's actually a lot easier to remember too. It's actually 3 words, banana bakery box, which our minds chunk into 3 pieces, 3 chunks, banana bakery box, versus having to remember AZ4GF, which is actually more chunks, and our mind is able to make relationships between words easier than between random numbers and letters. So it's easier to remember something like banana bakery box as well. So you want to keep that in mind, something that's kind of like interesting and catchy. This is part of why you see so many websites and apps and startups nowadays that are kind of like a combination of 2 different words, or a kind of like made up word like Groupon. It's because it's kind of catchy and memorable, and it's an easy way to get a short domain without having a sentence spelled out. Now, this uniqueness and descriptiveness is kind of a balance in and of itself. So you want to have something that's descriptive. If you're selling books, you might think the ideal website would be something like books.com, but that's not actually always true. Books.com, it is not successful compared to Amazon.com. Amazon is a little bit more memorable and interesting, but it's also very unique. If I go and I search for Amazon, I'm going to get Amazon.com probably, unless there's some other website about the Amazon River. But if I do something like Amazon Book, I'm definitely going to get what I'm looking for. If I have books.com and somebody does a search for books, they're going to have a lot of other things that are going to come up, not necessarily just my website, unless my website is already one of the top things. So it's a good idea to do a Google search for the domain and see how common of a word it is. If this is something that comes up very commonly, like look at the number of search results. If there are millions and millions, then it's not a very unique word. And you might think, oh, like a random character string is unique. It's not necessarily. But if it's unique, then there will be less, like maybe thousands or even hundreds. An example of this is XKCD.com. Randall Munroe, who wrote XKCD, created this character sequence XKCD because he discovered that there weren't really any other places on the internet that had XKCD. It's a very unusual combination of letters. And so he put this on the internet whenever he did anything, so that he could do a Google search and find himself. If he had put Randall Monroe, his name, there would have been other people with that name, Randall Monroe. So he basically created a very unique keyword for himself, and it contributed to his success a little bit. Now, it kind of backfired also because it became so popular that other people mentioning XKCD would use XKCD, and then he's not able to kind of like track himself anymore. But it goes to show that having a unique keyword can be much more important than a keyword that is descriptive. XKCD literally means nothing. So when you're getting a domain, same thing. Think of it almost as a keyword. It's also kind of like the name of your website or the name of your company. Amazon.com would be kind of weird if the name of it was something else. For example, go to books.com. It takes you to barnesandnoble.com actually. So you want your domain to actually be like what people call your website or your company or whatever it is. Now, another thing is you want to go with something that isn't going to trip people up. So look at RottenTomatoes.com. Now, do you spell it Rot-O-N or Rot-E-N? Some people are going to make the mistake and spell it with an E or an O the wrong way. And then tomatoes. Do you have an O, T-O-E-S? Do you have that extra letter in there or not? Some people are going to make a mistake on that. And unless you've bought all of the possible misspellings, people might end up at a spam website or somebody else's website. Also, Rotten Tomatoes is a great example because compare Rotten Tomatoes to moviereviews.com. They both are similar websites that do similar things, reviewing movies. But moviereviews.com has a very generic but very descriptive domain. It's a good domain in some senses, but it's not as memorable as Rotten Tomatoes. Rotten Tomatoes, you kind of are thinking like, why do they call it Rotten Tomatoes? It's got a connection, but you think about it a little bit, and that's going to help somebody remember how to type it in the future. It's also easy to type if you can spell it, and it's easy to communicate over the phone. So the last thing in terms of descriptiveness and uniqueness is if your name is pretty common worldwide, but not common locally, how do you deal with that? So say you have something like John's Bakery, and there are John's Bakeries all over the world in many, many cities. So johnsbakery.com probably won't be available. So one thing you can do is tag on the location name, your John's Bakery Pasadena. It'll make for a long URL, but it's pretty memorable in some senses. John's Bakery Pasadena. It tells you where it is exactly. You see this sort of narrowing scope on a lot of movies where it'll say like hobbitmovie.com. That's actually not a real website, but many movies have the name of the movie and then movie.com to kind of make sure that they are able to get a domain that is descriptive and tied to the name of the movie, but it makes allowances for the fact that that domain may have already been taken because movie names are often very common. So if you are going to go ahead and buy a domain, I suggest that you go to Google and do a search for domain names. Do this because you're going to get really good deals coming up in the ad results. Right now, for example, GoDaddy.com is offering domain name registration for $1 just for the first year. So that's actually a pretty good deal because .com domains usually cost about $12 a year. And you register by the year, so you're only going to get the deal for the first year, but that's good. And they'll try and trick you into thinking that it'll be a good deal to register for like 10 years at a time. But you're always going to be able to find better deals, and the prices kind of come down. So just do it 1 year at a time and do a Google search first. .coms are part of the, when people are typing a web domain in, they're going to just automatically type .com. So you can buy other domains like .org, .net, but unless you have a very specific reason for doing that, I suggest you just get a .com because that's what people are going to type. It's going to be more memorable. Another option is to get a domain for free. This is the .tk domain. I think that you can afford a .com for $1 a year. Especially since you spent $35 to purchase this course. Just consider it part of the course fees. But if you absolutely can't spend $1, or you can't, for some reason, you can't find one of these dollar deals for the first year, get a .tk domain. Here's a video link on that. So go to GoDaddy.com, follow one of the ads. You can't just go, if you go directly to GoDaddy.com, you're not going to get the deal. So you got to do a search for domain name, follow a link to GoDaddy.com, and here's where you can search for the availability of a domain. You can't just type in, say you want johnsbakery.com. You can't just type it in and see if a website pops up. Well, you can to some degree, but just because something doesn't pop up doesn't guarantee that the domain name isn't registered. It might be registered but not hooked up yet. So the way to do this is, it's called the Whois lookup. Just do it through a domain registrar. Network Solutions has a great way of, I will often just go to networksolutions.com and then type the domains that I'm looking to see if they're available. And then once I've figured out which one I want that's available, I'll go to the registrar that I actually want to purchase from, GoDaddy, and purchase it. But type it in, it'll correct you if you do a character that's not allowed, it'll tell you if it's available or not, it'll sometimes make suggestions, and choose your domain. Weigh all those things in the balance and purchase your domain. Don't get any of the extra add-ons, you don't need them. You don't need privacy, you don't need extra email, you don't need any of this stuff. Hosting is provided as part of this course, so all the extra add-ons are kind of rip-offs. Don't buy them. Just get the domain, just register it for 1 year, and you should be able to do it for $1. So after you've purchased your domain, you're gonna watch this video because you need to mess with your DNS, domain name servers, or is it domain name settings? You need to go in anyway and point to the name servers where we're gonna host. Don't worry if you don't know what that means yet. But you got to point to some name servers, and that'll set you up to be on the internet in the Unit 1 lecture when we are going through.